Black Waitress says, "Sir, that's my mother's signature," and the crystal glass slips from the billionaire CEO's hands, shattering against the Italian marble of the Golden Terrace, the city's most expensive restaurant. The noise cuts through the elegant murmur of the main hall like a knife. All eyes turn to Table 12, where David Richardson, CEO of Richardson Tech Industries, stands pale as a ghost, staring at the 24-year-old waitress who just uttered the words that would shake his $50 billion empire. Keisha Williams never imagined her life would change while serving grilled salmon and Dom Perignon champagne. She had been working at the Golden Terrace for 3 years, swallowing racist comments disguised as jokes and condescending smiles from customers who barely saw her as a human being. But at that moment, holding the water jug with steady hands, she was no longer invisible. "Excuse me, what did you say?" Richardson stammers, his usual baritone voice reduced to a hoarse whisper. Beside him, 2 Japanese investors watch in confusion as the powerful businessman crumbles before a black employee. Keisha points her trembling finger at the document Richardson was proudly displaying moments before, the original design for Richardson solar panels, the technology that transformed a mediocre businessman into one of the richest men in the country. In the lower right corner, an elegant and unmistakable signature, Dr. Amelia R. Williams, 2003. "I said," Keisha repeats, her voice gaining strength, "that's my mother's signature. Dr. Amelia Williams. The woman you said died in a lab accident 21 years ago." The flashback is inevitable. Keisha was only 3 years old when soldiers arrived at the door of the modest house where she lived with her mother, a brilliant chemical engineer specializing in renewable energy. "Explosion in the lab," they said. "Chemical accident. Unrecognizable body," they explained, without allowing a funeral. Just a small urn delivered a week later, and a paltry compensation from the company where Amelia worked as a junior researcher. Richardson Technologies. The empire was born exactly 6 months after Amelia Williams' death. Security. Richardson shouts, partially regaining his composure, but his hands shake uncontrollably as he tries to put the document away. "This woman is delusional. Get her out of here now." The restaurant manager, Mr. Morrison, a 50-year-old white man accustomed to pleasing billionaire customers, approaches nervously. "Keisha, please go back to the kitchen. We'll talk later." But Keisha doesn't move. 4 years, she has studied every photo, every document, every memory of her mother that she has managed to preserve. She knew that cursive handwriting better than her own. And now, seeing Richardson try to hide the evidence, an old suspicion finally takes shape. 21 years, she murmurs, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Exactly 21 years since my mother died, and you became a solar energy genius. What an interesting coincidence, don't you think?" The Japanese investors exchange uncomfortable glances. One of them whispers something in Japanese to the other. Richardson realizes he is losing control of the situation, and his mask of corporate benevolence begins to crack, revealing something much darker underneath. This person is clearly disturbed," he growls at Morrison. "I want her fired immediately. And if this hallucination makes it onto social media or into the press, I will sue this establishment for defamation." Keisha smiles for the first time in 3 years of silent humiliation. It's a smile Richardson can't quite decipher, but one he should fear, the smile of someone who has just found the thread that will unravel an entire tapestry of lies. As security approaches, she whispers just loud enough for Richardson to hear, "You didn't just kill my mother, did you? You killed everyone else who knew the truth about who really invented this technology." Richardson freezes. How the hell did she know about the others? There, amid the chaos of a luxury restaurant, before the curious eyes of the financial elite, Keisha carried a secret that could rewrite the history of the world's largest renewable energy company. If this story of revenge and justice is moving you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what lies ahead will prove that underestimating a daughter in search of the truth is the biggest mistake a billionaire can make. The dismissal came before security even arrived. Morrison, sweating coldly at the threat of Richardson suing the restaurant, did not hesitate to choose his side. Keisha Williams, you are fired for inappropriate conduct and disruption of the work environment. Hand in your apron and leave immediately. Richardson partially regained his composure, adjusting his Italian tie as if he could reorganize his wounded dignity along with the fabric. This person clearly suffers from serious mental disorders. She probably saw my name in some magazine and created this pathetic fantasy to get attention. Japanese investors Tanaka and Yamamoto exchanged uncomfortable glances. Tanaka whispered something in Japanese that Richardson didn't understand, but the tone was unmistakably questioning. The American CEO's reaction had been too disproportionate for a simple delusional employee. Mr. Richardson, Tanaka said carefully, perhaps it would be best to reschedule our meeting. It seems there have been unexpected complications. Absolutely not. Richardson slammed his fist on the table, making the cutlery clatter. I will not allow a deranged waitress to sabotage billion-dollar deals with ridiculous hallucinations. But Keisha didn't move. Even as security approached, she remained standing, watching Richardson with a calmness that deeply unsettled him. It was as if she knew something he couldn't decipher. 21 years is a long time to keep secrets, Mr. Richardson, she said, her voice low but laden with a certainty that cut through the noise of the restaurant. But not so long to forget a mother. Richardson felt a chill run down his spine. The way she said keep secrets suggested she knew more, much more. Security. Now. As the two uniformed men finally reached the table, Keisha smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, cold and calculated. You know what else is interesting, Mr. Richardson? My mother always said she kept copies of everything. Every experiment, every discovery, every private conversation with the bosses. Richardson's blood ran cold. Private conversations. How the hell did she? This woman is delusional, he yelled at the security guards, but his voice came out higher pitched than he intended. Get her out of here before she causes any more trouble. The security guards hesitated for a moment. Keisha wasn't being aggressive or violent. In fact, she seemed dangerously controlled for someone who had just lost her job in such a humiliating way. Don't worry, Keisha said gently to the security guards, raising her hands in surrender. I'll leave on my own. But Mr. Richardson, she turned one last time, maybe you should call your lawyers. You're going to need them very soon. And then she did something no one expected. She took her cell phone out of her pocket and showed the screen to Richardson. It was a photo, an old, faded photo, but unmistakable. It showed a young black woman in a laboratory, wearing a white lab coat, smiling next to a younger man who was clearly David Richardson, more than 2 decades ago. My mother kept a lot of photos, Mr. Richardson. And a lot of other things, too. Richardson felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. That photo, he remembered that day. Amelia had insisted on taking the photo to commemorate the partnership. He thought all the evidence had been destroyed in the accident. Impossible, he muttered, instinctively reaching for the phone. All the photos were. There are no more photos. Were what, Mr. Richardson? Keisha tilted her head, feigning innocence. Destroyed in the same accident that killed my mother? The Japanese investors didn't need to understand the nuances of English to realize that they were witnessing something far beyond a disturbed employee confronting her boss. Tanaka began discreetly putting his documents away in his briefcase. Keisha continued, her voice gaining strength. You know, I always found it strange how you managed to develop solar panel technology so quickly after her death. Almost as if you already had everything ready, just waiting for the right moment to present it as your creation. You have no idea what you're talking about. Richardson growled, but he was quickly losing control of the situation. Your mother was a junior researcher. An assistant. I developed all the technology. Assistant. Keisha laughed, but it was a joyless laugh. My mother had a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT and 2 postdoctorates in renewable energy. But of course, to you she was just an assistant, right? Richardson's mask was quickly slipping. The polished, articulate man was being replaced by something more primitive and desperate. It doesn't matter how many degrees she had. I had the contacts, the funding, the business acumen. Without me, her ideas would have died in a university lab. So you admit they were her ideas? Richardson realized his mistake immediately. In the last 5 minutes, this waitress had gotten more information out of him than federal investigators could get in months. And she was recording everything. Keisha saw the recognition in his eyes and smiled again, that cold smile that haunted him. Thank you for the confession, Mr. Richardson. It will be very useful. Enough. Richardson exploded, standing up so abruptly that he knocked over his chair. I'm not going to stand here and listen to delusional accusations from a what, Mr. Richardson? Keisha interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. Finish the sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the restaurant was now watching, waiting to see what word would come out of the mouth of the billionaire humanitarian, the philanthropist who publicly supported causes of racial equality. Richardson clenched his fists, his face red with impotent rage. He wanted to complete the sentence. He wanted to use the words he really thought, but there were too many witnesses, too many cell phone cameras now pointed in their direction. Security, he said through clenched teeth. If she doesn't leave voluntarily, remove her by force. But Keisha was already putting her cell phone away and walking toward the exit. It won't be necessary. I've already gotten what I came for. As she walked through the hall, she stopped next to the Japanese investor's table. Gentlemen, she said politely in perfect Japanese, it might be best to investigate Mr. Richardson's background more thoroughly before finalizing any agreement. Some recent discoveries could significantly affect the company's reputation. Tanaka and Yamamoto looked at each other, surprised not only by her fluency in the language, but by the respectful formality with which she addressed them, a stark contrast to Richardson's thinly veiled arrogance. Arigato gozaimasu, Tanaka replied with a respectful bow. Richardson watched the exchange with growing horror. What are you saying? What the hell is going on here? But Keisha was already on her way out, pausing only to address the entire room. To everyone who is recording, and I know you are, post on social media with the hashtag Justice for Amelia. It's time for the world to know the truth about David Richardson. And then she left, leaving behind a panicked billionaire, skeptical investors, and an entire restaurant full of powerful people who had just witnessed something that would change everything. Richardson sank into his chair, the reality of the situation finally penetrating his arrogance. This was not a delusional waitress. She was Amelia Williams' daughter, and she had spent 21 years preparing for this moment. What he didn't know was that the real storm was just beginning. Keisha hadn't just kept photos and documents for 2 decades. She had built a network, gathered evidence, and planned every move with the precision of a master chess player. Richardson thought he had won 21 years ago, but in reality, he had only given Keisha enough time to prepare a revenge that would destroy not only his fortune, but the entire foundation of lies upon which he had built his empire. In the 3 days following the confrontation at the Golden Terrace, Keisha quickly discovered the extent of David Richardson's power. First, she was summarily fired, without unemployment benefits, with a negative reference that made it nearly impossible to find another job in the hospitality industry. Then came the small acts of revenge. Her bank account was mysteriously frozen for tax investigation. Her name appeared on lists of problem employees that circulated discreetly among elite employers. Richardson thought he was dealing with a desperate young woman who would give in to financial pressure in a matter of days. What he didn't know was that Keisha Williams had spent the last 6 years of her life preparing for this very moment. In the small apartment she shared with her grandmother, Keisha opened a closet that had been locked for years. Inside, meticulously organized, were hundreds of documents, photographs, newspaper clippings, and even recordings. It wasn't obsession, it was systematic investigation. Since she was 18, when she gained access to the archives of the university where her mother had studied, she had been building a dossier that would make federal investigators proud. "My little granddaughter," said Grandma Dorothy, watching Keisha spread the documents on the kitchen table, "are you sure you're ready for this? That man won't hesitate to hurt you." Keisha smiled, but it was a joyless smile. "Grandma, I've been preparing for this my whole life. Mom didn't die in an accident, and I'm going to prove it." The phone rang. It was Marcus Thompson, the only investigative journalist who had responded to her emails in the last 2 days. "Keisha? I just got a very interesting call from a lawyer representing David Richardson. Apparently, you're a mentally unstable former employee who is spreading dangerous slander about a respected business leader." "And what did you say?" Marcus laughed on the other end of the line. "I said I'd love to hear her side of the story. Especially after seeing the video you sent me." The video. Keisha had discreetly recorded Richardson's reaction at the restaurant, especially the moment when he almost admitted that the ideas were her mother's. But that was just the appetizer. The main course had been stored away for 6 years, waiting for the right moment. "Mr. Thompson," Keisha said calmly, "what I showed you in the email is just the tip of the iceberg. My mother was meticulous. She documented everything. Every experiment, every meeting, every private conversation she had with Richardson." "You mean?" "Audio recordings, email correspondence. And best of all, she was suspicious of him in the last few months before she died. She even made backup copies of everything and sent them to a third party." Marcus was silent for a moment. As a veteran journalist, he knew when he was on to something big. "Keisha, you need to understand that Richardson has unlimited resources. He will try to destroy your credibility, your life, your family. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" "Mr. Thompson," Keisha's voice was steely, "he destroyed my life 21 years ago. I'm just returning the favor." Meanwhile, at the offices of Richardson Tech Industries, the mood was one of all-out war. Richardson had hired a public relations firm specializing in crisis management, and a team of lawyers whose sole function was to neutralize the threat Keisha posed. "I need you to understand," Richardson told the group gathered in his conference room, "this woman cannot be underestimated. She was smart enough to provoke me publicly, record my reaction, and now she's trying to blackmail my company." Susan Hartwell, the head of public relations, leafed through a detailed report. "Mr. Richardson, we've done a thorough investigation. Keisha Williams, 24 years old, single, no children, lives with her grandmother, limited educational background. She has worked in low-skilled jobs her entire life. She is an easy target." "Easy?" Richardson laughed bitterly. "That easy target made me look like an idiot in front of billionaire investors. I want her completely destroyed. Reputation, credit, ability to work anywhere in this city." What none of them knew was that Keisha had not been alone for a long time. Dr. Patricia Collins, a former lab colleague of Amelia Williams and now a full professor of chemistry at the State University, had been the third person who had kept the backup copies for more than 2 decades. When Keisha knocked on Dr. Collins' office door that afternoon, the 65-year-old professor hugged her as if she were her own daughter. "I was wondering when you would come looking for me. Your mother said that if anything happened to her, you would eventually ask the right questions. Did you know she didn't die in an accident?" "Dear," Dr. Collins sighed heavily, "your mother called me the day before the accident. She said Richardson was pressuring her to sign documents that would transfer all rights to the research to him. She refused. The next day she was dead." Keisha felt a chill. "Why didn't you ever report it?" "Because I didn't have enough evidence. Richardson covered his tracks very well. But your mother was brilliant. She predicted he would try something like this. That's why she left me this." Dr. Collins opened an old safe and took out a small metal box. Inside were 3 flash drives, a sealed envelope, and something that made Keisha's heart stop, her mother's graduation ring, which should have been cremated along with her body. She told me, if anything happens to me, give this to my daughter when she's ready to fight. I think that time has come. As Keisha opened the files on the flash drives, she discovered that her mother had been much more paranoid and intelligent than she had imagined. There were recordings of phone conversations where Richardson clearly pressured Amelia to transfer the rights to the research. There were emails where he threatened to take drastic measures if she didn't cooperate. And there was something even Keisha didn't expect, a recording of their last conversation, made secretly in the lab. In the recording, Richardson's voice was cold as ice. Amelia, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. But this technology is going to be mine, with or without you. Her mother's response was courageous to the end. David, you can steal my research, but you will never steal my conscience. Someone will find out the truth. Not if no one is alive to tell it. The file ended abruptly. Keisha looked at Dr. Collins, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a daughter who finally had the weapons to avenge her mother's death. Richardson made a fatal mistake, Keisha murmured, carefully putting away the flash drives. He thought a black waitress would never be smart enough to connect the dots. Dr. Collins smiled for the first time in years. Your mother always said you had the same determination she did. I think Richardson is about to find out that underestimating the women of the Williams family is the last mistake anyone can make. That night, as she organized the evidence that would destroy Richardson's empire, Keisha received a threatening message on her cell phone. Stop now or the consequences will be permanent. The number was blocked, but she knew exactly who it was from. Keisha typed a simple reply, my mother sends her regards. For a moment, when that recording revealed the final conversation between her mother and Richardson, all the years of pain and uncertainty finally made sense. But what would come next would prove that some revenge is worth waiting 2 decades to execute perfectly. What Richardson didn't know was that Keisha had spent the last 3 days orchestrating much more than a simple exposé. While he was mobilizing lawyers and public relations experts to destroy a waitress, she was coordinating what would become the most spectacular downfall of a CEO in American corporate history. Marcus Thompson wasn't just an investigative journalist. He was the investigative journalist who had taken down 2 corrupt senators and a mayor in the last 5 years. When Keisha showed him Dr. Collins' audio recordings, he knew immediately that he was looking at the story of the century. Keisha, Marcus said on Thursday morning, I need you to understand what we're about to do. This isn't just going to destroy Richardson, it's going to rewrite the history of renewable energy over the last 20 years. The first bomb exploded at 6 a.m. Marcus's article in the New York Chronicle wasn't just a news story, it was a complete dossier. The audio recordings were embedded in the website, allowing anyone to hear Richardson's voice threatening Amelia Williams. The documentary evidence was digitized and verified by 3 independent laboratories. And at the center of it all was the photo of Richardson with Amelia in the lab, dated exactly 6 months before her death. At 6:30 a.m., Richardson's cell phone began ringing non-stop. By 7 a.m., Richardson Tech Industries stock had plummeted 40%. By 8 a.m., Japanese investors had sent an official statement canceling the billion-dollar deal. But Keisha wasn't done. The second phase of the operation began when she appeared in front of the Richardson Tech Industries building at 9 a.m., no longer as a fired waitress, but as the daughter of the real inventor of the solar panels that made Richardson rich. She wasn't alone. Dr. Patricia Collins was by her side, holding a folder containing 20 years of documents. Dr. James Morrison, Amelia's former lab colleague and now professor emeritus at MIT, had flown in from Boston specifically to be there. And Marcus Thompson was broadcasting everything live on his social media channels. I come here today not to seek revenge, Keisha said to the cameras and the crowd that had gathered, but to restore the memory of the woman who truly created the technology that saved millions of lives through clean energy. My mother, Dr. Amelia Williams, did not die in an accident. She was murdered because she refused to hand over her life's work to a man who wasn't a third as smart as she was. From the 47th floor of the building, Richardson watched the crowd gather through the glass windows of his office. His lawyers were frantically talking on the phone, trying to control the damage, but it was like trying to stop a tsunami with an umbrella. "Mr. Richardson," said his assistant, entering the office with a pale face, "the FBI is downstairs. They have a search and seizure warrant." Richardson felt his blood run cold. Impossible. There isn't enough evidence to. "Sir," his assistant interrupted, holding a tablet, "they have the recordings. All of them. And apparently there are witnesses who are talking about other similar cases." Other cases. Richardson knew exactly what she was referring to. Amelia Williams had not been his only victim over the years, just the most important one. Dr. Chun, who committed suicide after developing a revolutionary battery. Sarah Martinez, who died in a car accident a week before patenting a new type of wind turbine. Each tragedy had resulted in Richardson developing similar technologies months later. At 11 a.m., Richardson was escorted out of his own building in handcuffs. The images went around the world in a matter of minutes. The man who had built an empire on the corpses of true geniuses being treated like the criminal he always was. Keisha watched from the sidewalk, surrounded by reporters, as the man who had stolen her mother's life was placed in the back seat of a police car. Richardson looked at her through the window, and for the first time in 21 years, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only the fear of a man who finally understood that he had completely underestimated his opponent. "Ms. Williams," shouted a reporter, "how does it feel to see Richardson arrested?" Keisha took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 2 decades of pain finally being lifted. "I feel that my mother can finally rest in peace. And that no other brilliant inventor will have their life stolen by predators like David Richardson." The third phase began that afternoon. The intellectual property lawyers Keisha had secretly consulted with over the past few weeks filed 16 simultaneous lawsuits, claiming the rights to all the patents Richardson had stolen over the years. With the evidence presented, it was only a matter of time before the entire tech empire was dismantled and credit was given to the true inventors, or their families. By 6 p.m., Richardson Tech Industries had lost 70% of its value. Investors were fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. And David Richardson, the man who thought he could intimidate a black waitress with threats and corporate power, was in a federal cell facing charges of murder, corporate fraud, and conspiracy. Keisha returned home that night, hugged her grandmother Dorothy, and for the first time in 21 years, cried tears of relief instead of tears of pain. Grandma Dorothy smiled, stroking her granddaughter's hair. "Your mother would be so proud of you, girl. So proud." On television, the news continued to show images of what was already being called the Richardson scandal. But for Keisha, the real victory wasn't seeing her enemy destroyed. It was knowing that Amelia Williams' memory would finally be honored the way it deserved. What no one knew yet was that this was only the first phase of something much bigger. Because when you spend 21 years planning justice, you don't stop at revenge. You build something that ensures injustice can never happen again. 6 months later, Keisha Williams was no longer an unemployed waitress struggling to survive. Sitting at the conference table of the newly founded Williams Innovation Institute, a research center dedicated to renewable energy built with the $2.3 billion recovered from the stolen patents, she watched a new generation of young scientists present their findings. "Today we are announcing our 5th patent this year," she said into the microphone during the press conference. "Every penny of the profits will be invested in scholarships for students from disadvantaged communities. My mother always believed that knowledge should serve humanity, not enrich predators." Richardson, meanwhile, was languishing in a federal prison serving 3 life sentences. His former friends in the business elite had deleted his name from their contact lists. The mansion was auctioned off to pay compensation to the families of the other victims. His children changed their last name. At the last hearing, he had begged to speak to Keisha. I just wanted to ask for forgiveness," he stammered through the prison glass. Keisha looked at the man who once thought he could intimidate her. "Mr. Richardson, forgiveness is something you ask for when there is still time to repair the damage. You had 21 years. Marcus Thompson won the Pritzker Award for investigative journalism. Dr. Collins was appointed to head the new institute. And Grandma Dorothy was finally able to retire, proudly watching her granddaughter on television. Richardson tried to destroy Keisha, but ended up destroying himself. She learned that true revenge is not retaliating for the harm you've suffered, it's achieving success your enemies could never imagine. The best part? Every time Richardson turned on the prison television, he saw the name Williams Innovation Institute in the news, reminding him daily of what happens when you underestimate the power of a daughter determined to honor her mother. If this story of justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the truth always finds its way to the light, no matter how long it takes.